Hi, my name is Tom Stark, and here on our YouTube channel, we're helping you to learn how to build great websites using SP Page Builder and Joomla 4. We're back this week doing a probably shortened tutorial because we're dealing with the heading tool built into SP Page Builder. The heading tool, in a lot of ways, looks like the text tool that we covered in a previous tutorial. The heading tool basically allows you to put any of your heading tags, your H1 through 6 tags, anywhere on your website. In fact, it's going to look a lot like the text tool interface, only it doesn't have the text portion down below, and there's some settings that are in a couple different places. So with that in mind, let's get right into the tutorial. So here we are in the front-end editor of SP Page Builder 3, and we're going to be focusing the rest of our trainings on the front-end editing because in SP Page Builder 4, back-end editing will no longer be available. So what we'd like to do is come over here to our add-ons, grab the heading, and drag it into place right here. And here we have a 12 wide column that has the title, this is title, right here. And as you can see, if we go to the tablet view and the phone view, it stays in place. So for now, we're going to look at the computer view, and then we'll look at some settings for the other views as well. The first thing we'd like to do is give this an admin label or administration label. We're going to call this more information. And then what I'd like to do is grab this, do a Control C, go over here and do a Control V. And now we have more information text right here. Now we're just going to go right down this column here. The next thing down is you get to tell it what type of HTML element you want it to be. Do you want it to be an H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, a paragraph element, a span, or a div. And for now, we're just going to leave it as an H2. From there, we get to do a couple things. Number one, if you would like this to be a link to go to another website, like suppose you wanted, if somebody clicked on that for it to go to Google, we can type this in here and we can have it open up in a new window or the same window. When you navigate off of your website, you should always open it up in a new window. And if you notice, when we hover over it now, it changes colors because there's built-in colors in the website. I can show you how to change those. In fact, let's do that now. In this style format, we're going to make the link color to be black and the hover color to be like a yellow, just so you can see them. And black and yellow. Now when I hover, it goes from black to yellow. But right now we're just going to leave these alone. So you can see it goes from red to blue because they're the built-in colors in the website. But we're not going to link our heading, but we are going to change. We are going to choose a new font. And one of my new favorite fonts is Rocket, built-in Google font. I like the look of that. And H2 has a built-in font size in my template, but I'd like to make this a little bit bigger. So while we're in the PC view, I'd like to kind of bring it out here to like 60, I think is my number. So if I come here and go 60, and then on my tablet view, 60 is not bad, but I think we're going to make this a 50. And then in my phone view, we're going to make it more like a 40. Okay, so as we get bigger, the font sizes get bigger. Now, on a single line, this next setting down here doesn't matter too much. But you notice when we're down here on the phone, there's a lot of space between here. So what you can do is you can actually change the line height here to make it match what you'd like it to look like. So I always go down to 0 and I say, I like how it looks right there. And on the tablet mode and the computer mode, it doesn't really matter because it's on a single line. So right now we already have a great looking heading. we're going to keep going down the tools here. You can do some font styling, which you could underline this, and or you can italicize this. And you're going to notice here that there is a double capital A, which should capitalize this font, very much like it does in the text box. But you notice here it does not work. Why is that? Well, that's because text transform is actually 2 boxes down. If you click on this, you get to capitalize the first word. You get to make the whole thing uppercase, or you get to make the whole thing lowercase. Or if you choose none, however you typed it in up in here, it will look like in here. Like if I took this last N and I said, make it information, see the N is capitalized. But if I come down here and I say, hey, only capitalize the first letter of each word, only capitalize everything, lowercase everything, and capitalize, even though it says only capitalize the first letter, it's not going to transition that to a lowercase. It's going to leave what's typed in up here. But if I were to do it this way and say, make this a lowercase n, but make this a lowercase I, like so, notice it's still a capital because I'm saying to capitalize the first word. So if I say no, it's a lowercase I, capitalize each word, make everything uppercase or make everything lowercase. We're going to leave everything, we're going to leave everything uppercased right now. And as we go into our different views, everything is still looking great, except now that everything's all capital, it looks a little crunched vertically, I think it needs a little more space. So we come over here and once again, we say, okay, I like that. That's not too bad, but I like it a little closer together. I like 30. Here we go. Perfect. Okay. So back out to our computer view. As we continue to go down the list, jumping back up here, you get to choose the font weight. So you can, on this particular font, there are 7 of them. So you can go thin, extra light, light, normal, and then you start going on the heavier side, medium, semi-bold, sorry about that, bold, extra bold, and black. So for this heading, I think we're going to choose light. Nah, it's a little too light. What's normal look like? I think I want it standing out a little bit more than that. Medium. There we go. I like that. So already it's standing out, right? So this is awesome. The other thing that's great about the heading tool is you can actually do a text shadow. So, before we get there, if you want to put a title icon in here, you could definitely put a title icon. Let's pick the Amazon logo, and you get to say whether it's before or after the title. But we are not going to choose a logo for now. We're going to turn that off. Actually, if we wanted to, we could look up info and put this I in a circle and say make it before the title. And there we go. We now have our icon here for information. And we can change the icon color to anything we'd like it to be. Like if we wanted it to really stand out, make it yellow or white. But we can do anything we want with that. We're going to leave it black for now, just so it looks like the rest of our heading. So the next setting down is how you want the content to be aligned. So we can align it left, we can align it right, or where it's defaulting to, we like it right in the center there. We're going to leave that alone. So the really cool thing is you can also do a text shadow. So right now our text shadow color is white. It's all Fs. But suppose we say, okay, offset it by 5 pixels to the right, 5 pixels down. That looks pretty cool. But then you can take the blur and drag it up, and then all of a sudden you got this nice cool effect. And if we actually take this and make it black, Now it's a little dark. So here's another thing about text shadow color. You can, when you click on this and you choose your color, you can also choose its transparency. So if I come down to here and I say, okay, I kind of like it right around 44, 45. And now you can see we have this nice shadowed text, which is just awesome because that takes a little bit of coding when you want to do it by hand. We're going to come into the CSS class in a little bit because we're going to take a little diversion here once we get to the next page of settings. Everything in this first panel has to do with the actual text inside this heading box. So it's a little confusing, but there are margins and paddings here that have to do with the text. But if we go to the style page, there's also margins and paddings that are on this page, and they are different settings. So right now let's jump into the style tab, and the very first thing we get to do is choose the color of our text. Now remember, we set the color of this icon on the front back in here, the icon color. Here we're going to make this red. And then if this were, like we saw earlier, if this was something that we were going to link, we could choose the link color, which I would choose the same color as this, and then maybe make it a darker red when you hover, so that if this were actually linked, it would just go to a darker red when I hovered. So getting back to the style tab, we're going to leave these blank for now. We're going to leave that text, maybe we'll make it like a nice orangey color in here. Going down further, there are background color options. Right now it's set to none, which means we can see the page color through it, but we can change this to black and really make that stand out. However, in black, this disappeared. So if we wanted that to stand out more, we could grab this color and copy it, come back to here and change this to the same color. And there we go. You also notice there's a little bit of spacing issues going on here, which can be taken care of, I believe, right here. If we make this a 10, you know, we'll move it down a little. 10's probably a little much. So if we change this to like a 5, we kind of get a little more centered. That probably needs to be a little bit more than that. Let's say 8. And there we have it centered. Getting back to our style sheet, you can also put an image behind it. If you had a custom graphic you wanted to make as the background for your heading, you could put that behind it. You could also put a gradient behind it. And much like we learned in previous lessons, we can change these to any color we want. We can change where those colors change position. And we can also change the angle to like straight up and down, which I believe will be 180 is straight up and down. And if we took this and kind of did this and took this, did this, that's a pure gradient straight top to bottom. If we took this and dropped this down to 50, if we took this down to 50-ish and take this up to 50-ish, you'll notice you'll get a perfectly harsh line right across the middle if you change these both to 50. Like that. Anything you do off of that will soften that line until you get it how you want it to look. But for now, we're going to leave it as a, we're going to leave the color on as black so we can kind of show you a couple things. Actually, we're going to leave it none. So these margins are the actual text block that shows up when you hover. So these margins and paddings affect the block, where these margins and paddings affect the text. And they are slightly different. But for now, you notice there's a 30 pixel margin on the bottom. If we were to eliminate that, you will see it's going to jump up. Actually, because there's no place for it to jump up, if we make this maybe like a 60, you'll notice it jumps down. There we go. We're going to leave it at 0 for now. But here's what I want to show you. Let's go back to here and let's put our, we have our text shadow, but I want to, for this tutorial, I want to make it white. Now we're going to leave it black. Okay, we'll leave that alone. So the other thing you can do in the background is you can add a border. It wants to know the border width per device. So let's say on a computer it's 2. We're going to make the color black. It needs a style, so you can make it solid. You can make it double, but in order for double to be seen, you have to make this larger. See how they show up? The larger you get it, but at 2, double does not show up. But if we left it at 6, you see a double. You can make it dotted, and you can make it dashed. So if we leave this solid for now, you'll notice that these two are clanging into each other. In fact, 6 is a little much. I'm always like a 2-person guy, but they're still banging into each other. This is where this margin comes into play. You want this to be larger down the bottom. So let's make this like a 50, and now we have space between the bottom of this box and the bottom of this box. Also notice that our text is off center. And that is because if we come to the front end, we have a 30 here. Remember I said these settings deal with the actual box, and I actually made a mistake here. I did not want to make them all to go to 50. I forgot to turn the lock off and just change the bottom to 50. Notice how it is centered. It is no longer centered. Actually, it never has been centered, but once you put this line here, you'll notice that this text is not centered vertically in this box. Now, you could come in here and make this a 0px, 0 pixels, and then come into here, maybe make this a 10 or maybe a 15. And you could do it that way. Or if we leave this alone and we come back to here, we can add a margin here of say 20, and it's going to do the same thing because it's just affecting the text. Don't forget, margins are outside of the box. Paddings are inside of the box. So we added a 20 pixel margin to the top of this text. Whereas if we go back to here, if we put a 20 pixel margin at the top of this, the whole box is going to move down. See that? I'm sorry, this is padding. I'm sorry. And come down here and you have a margin and say we add like a 50 here, you'll see the whole box jumps down. Let's make these say 20 and 20. Okay. So now we have this nice padding. We have this black box around it. But going down now further, we get into, on your border, you also have the ability to put radiuses on the corner. Once it gets to a certain point, it's just going to round the whole box. That point is usually somewhere around, has to get at least half the height of the box. So if you put this up here, no matter how tall this box would be, unless it got to like 500 tall, it's just going to be an oval ends on it. But you can put little border radiuses if you'd like. But here's something really cool that I want to share with you. Remember I said this section has to do with the box. So if we have a box shadow and we make this, 5, you'll notice it's on the outside of the box now. And if we make this a 5, you'll notice we have a shadow that's on the box, not on the letters. Now, the reason I tell you this is there's a really cool effect that you can do if you leave this at 0 and 0. And you take the blur and you just move it up, it's putting a white shadow around your box. And then if you take the spread and make it a little bit larger, you'll notice it's getting bigger. Now it's getting a little too harsh, right? So we could kind of soften it a little bit with the blur. But remember I told you when you pick a color here, you can choose its opacity. What you can do now is pull this down. And now you got this nice soft glow, and to have another really cool effect, which I really like, is turn the border off. So what we can do is come into here, and we can change the padding on the top, unlock this, and maybe make this a 20. Whoop, I'm sorry, not the top. We want it on the bottom. So come into here and make this a 20. And now we have this really cool glowing effect. Now, what we've done when we use this effect is we actually will take the background color, change it to white, and then bring this way down to like 0.05 or 07. So the nice thing about this effect is it is just enough brighter than the background that it stands out, but it doesn't really catch your attention as if the background color was pure white. I mean, that's really standing out. But if you just come in here, and a lot of times we'll go into right around the 0.1 range, it's just bright enough over top of this to make it really stand out and pop out. There is an animation that when you scroll to this heading on the page, you can have it fade in, you can have it fade in down, fade in big down, which will drop it from the top of the page. You have all of those in every direction, fade in left, right, up. You can flip it. You can flip it Y. You can flip it X. And just so you know, if you change this to 1 second long, which is 1,000, and you go to flip Y, it bounces a little bit more than it did before. And your fades take a little bit longer, fade in, which are nice and smooth. But the other thing you can do is delay it by like 1/3 of a second. And then when you get to it, it'll show up eventually a little bit after you roll up into it. I want to talk about custom CSS because with this version of SP Page Builder 3, in preparation for SP Page Builder 4, you used to be able to just put custom code in here and it would only impact this box. So if I were to come in here and on the heading tool, that is very true. Like see this H2 here, because this is the only heading tool, I can come into here and I can say H2, open curly bracket and say color green. Okay. And then to close it out, put a semicolon, a close bracket, and it changed this no matter what I set it to up here, because the last thing it's reading is this one. Anything that's H2 is changing to green. But this is an H2 and this is an H2, but none of those are changing. And that's because this is an H2 in a text box, as is this, as is this, as is this. And this is not really affecting these. But let me show you what's been happening, or what now happens when you try to enter something in the custom CSS. So let's just save this. We're going to go back up into this text box, okay? And we're going to say, come down to the style, and we're going to say on the H2 tags, make the background. So open up our curly bracket, we'll make the background white. Uh-oh, what happened? I'm only typing in this box, but every H2 header tag put a background of white. And that is because technically this is not the best way to program CSS. You should really connect it to something with a class. So how do we stop this from happening? Okay. Well, what you want to do is the objects that you want to focus on, or the only objects you want to change. If you grab this text box, come down here and put a class name in here. We're going to call this white background. Okay. So this box here is now looking for a CSS class of white background. It's not finding any, so it's not changing anything. But if we copy this name and come back to here, and before this H2, we're going to create a class. And to create a class in CSS, it starts with a dot or a period. And if I go Control V, now because this has a class of white background and none of the other H2s do, it is only saying something with a class of white background H2 turn white. Now to show you even more what I mean, if we were to change this to an H3, it's going to go away because it's only looking for an H2 in this class. Now, suppose you want to change this background to white as well. Well, we know that the class is called white background. So what we can do is we can say, come down into here and go Control C, save this text box, come down to this text box, come to Style, and Control V. Nothing's changed that because we haven't called it. Grab just the title, no period, and copy this because now this is how it's called. This is how it's defined, I should say, in CSS to call it. It's the same name without the period. And as soon as I put this in here, lo and behold, that is white as well. So don't forget when you're done to save your work and make sure everything looks good on the different viewports because we've made a lot of changes to some things. And here, obviously, we have on this, you notice information is pushing off outside the box. So if we come back to here and edit this. First off, let's turn the animation off so we don't have any animation to deal with anymore. Come back to here, and then we come into here and say that 40 is probably a little big. So we'll go right there with 35. And there it now fits perfectly inside the box. Everything looks good on all three viewpoints. We can now save our work and close out. Have fun. Enjoy creating great websites with SP Page Builder and Joomla 4.